Hey there, this is your teacher, Mr. H, and you're watching History in a Hoodie. Today's episode is about the Mississippian Indians, where we'll learn all about who were Georgia's earliest residents. I can't wait to find out, so let's get this show started. What are we learning about today? The standard for today's lesson asks students to describe the characteristics of American Indians living in Georgia at the time of European contact, including culture, food, weapons, tools, and shelter. Before we start, let's go over some vocabulary for today's lesson. Mississippian Indians were Native Americans living around the Mississippi River from around 800 AD until shortly after Europeans first explored the Southeast. Heredity means passing on or inherited through family line. Chiefdom is the rank of political leadership where one person holds power over many communities. Specialization means concentrating on becoming an expert in a particular skill. There were earlier groups of prehistoric Native American tribes living in Georgia, the Paleo, Archaic, and Woodland tribes. However, only the Mississippian American Indians were living in the land that would become Georgia when the European explorers first arrived at our shores. Those first Europeans were the Spanish. They arrived in the 1500s, and what they discovered when they stepped foot in Georgia was a very complex society of Native Americans. The Mississippian Indians were named because this group of similar tribes was found all around the Mississippi River region. These people dominated the modern region of the southeast United States from about 800 AD until after the arrival of the Spanish in the 1500s, so around 700 years. Mississippians were highly skilled at agriculture, even at a large scale. They developed an understanding of soil fertility and planted groups of crops together that would help keep their soil productive for years. One group of crops, named the Three Sisters by the Mississippians, was corn, beans, and squash. When the Three Sisters were planted close together, they all grew more abundantly and helped replenish the nutrients in the soil. Mississippians often lived in cities that rivaled the size of some European towns. A Mississippian city had a central plaza for markets and trading, residential areas, and often defensive structures. In Cartersville, Georgia, the archaeological remains of a Mississippian village show that there was once a moat and a wall built of tree trunks standing tall all around the village. It is believed these defensive structures were used to keep out unfriendly neighboring tribes and dangerous wildlife. Houses and other buildings were made of wattle and daub, which is woven sticks covered in mud or clay. And many Mississippian villages had built a large earthen mound near the center. Archaeologists have been able to discover a couple things about these tall, flat-topped mounds. Firstly, the dirt to make the mound was moved. So that means the people built these mounds themselves. Next, human remains have been found buried inside the mounds. This proves that the Mississippians developed some sort of religion and worship. Finally, remains of wooden structures are found within the mounds. This suggests that some of the village's most important activities, like government leadership and religious activities, occurred on top of this mound. The Europeans that first visited the Mississippian villages were surprised by the complex societies that existed in the New World. Tribes developed complex trade networks all across the Mississippi River region. They traded food, beads, pottery, tools, and much more. These people had an advanced government system with a chiefdom structure. Typically, the chief earned his position through heredity, meaning passed down through family. The chief would make all the decisions for the village, or even a couple villages, but would also have a council formed of the heads of families who would advise the chief. Thanks to the advancement of agriculture, not all members of Mississippian tribes had to work at food collection every day, leaving the opportunity to specialize in different occupations. In addition to the agriculture, Native Americans became skilled at pottery, art, and tool making. They worked as religious leaders, government leaders, traders, farmers, and still did some hunting and gathering. So what? How did contact with European explorers change the face of Georgia? When Spanish explorers first arrived in the New World, they traveled on an expedition that explored nearly the entire southeast region, from Florida to Texas. Sometimes those encounters were peaceable, sometimes those encounters were violent. Despite having much smaller numbers in the New World, the Spaniards arrived to the North American shores with three advantages over the Native Americans they would encounter: guns, germs, and horses. In the cases of violent encounters, the Mississippian spears and bows and arrows were no match for the Spaniards on horsebacks and aiming guns. But even in the case of peaceful encounters, the Native Americans' lack of immunity to European diseases like smallpox decimated their tribes over the course of a couple centuries of European visits. Some historians estimate about 20 million people may have died, which is about 95% of the native population. And that wasn't from the guns carried by the small European expeditions, but the germs they unknowingly brought with them. After European visits, native tribes began to decline rapidly. The Mississippian society collapsed and broke into smaller, more local tribes, which in Georgia were the Cherokee and Creek tribes. Now what? What are we going to do with this information? Archaeologists and anthropologists have a very difficult job to do. They observe the few remains of ancient groups of people and try to guess what they were like. The information we have about Mississippian tribes, their government structure, religious nature, or trading structure, may be all wrong, and historians may find new evidence someday that changes our understanding of these people. While the European explorers did not intend to wipe out entire civilizations with their icky germs, it is so extremely disappointing that they did, because of all the knowledge and understandings we lost about their society when they died. Egypt was once home to the Library of Alexandria. It was built around 3000 BC and was home to all of the most important knowledge of the day. The library was believed to contain entire histories of the world up to that point, early advanced schematics for inventions like steam engines and wind turbines, which wouldn't be invented again for centuries, early scientific advances, poetry, literature, and religious text. I've talked about the Library of Alexandria in past tense because it is no more. It burned down around the year 270 AD. Imagine how much more advanced the world would be right now if the steam engine was first built in the year 200 AD rather than 1781. The Industrial Revolution starting over 1,000 years earlier, too. There's not much we can do about the past with preserving history, culture, and knowledge because much of it is already gone. Maybe someday we can invent a time machine to go observe what those people were like and what they knew about the world, but I wouldn't bet on it. Instead, we need to work on preserving what's left of our untouched world and making sure that we place value on protecting that history, culture, and knowledge well into the future. There are a few places left in the world, like deep in the rainforest or on Pacific islands, where groups of people have managed to make it into the 21st century without outsider influence. These places in South America, Central Africa, or New Guinea need to remain untouched so we don't destroy the last unique cultures of this world. Wow, so learning about the native Georgian tribes is really important for us to understand. I'm glad we learned about it today. Are you ready for some review questions? Which crops were essential to the Mississippian agricultural development? Which is true regarding the development of Native American cultures in Georgia? Native Americans living in Georgia built many mounds, such as the ones that can be found at Etowah. These mounds were most likely used for... Which statement shows a major societal advancement made by the Mississippians? I hope all of you learned a lot from today's episode of History in a Hoodie about the Mississippian tribes of Georgia. If you did, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Just kidding, I don't care about that stuff, but do make sure you study this lesson. Bye now.